is Star Wars Knights of the Fallen Empire, TORtanic 2.0. Hi guys! With the ongoing news about the Old Republic, Knights of the Fallen Empire, I felt it important to consider the idea that Knights of the Fallen Empire might fail. First off, Star Wars The Old Republic never shut down, but it didn't become the great game that fans were promised either. Swtor has never received the love that Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 did. Swtor's storyline has never been seen as the worthy successor to KOTOR's storyline, and it looks like BioWare is trying to change that with Knights of the Fallen Empire, or at least try. The launch of Swtor has frequently been called the TORtanic. Because of the massive player loss, over 2 million players bought the game at launch, with more following in the months after. 1.7 million players played within the first month, but after the first couple of months, the game started losing subs as players reached Endgame and didn't like what they found. Players have long said that the problem was a lack of raiding and PvP, but BioWare seems to think that the problem was a lack of story. That might be hopeful thinking, but there's no denying that the Swtor story is really where the game shines. The story is really what makes the game unique for an MMO, mostly by virtue of its existence, and by being pretty good for 50 levels, and not quite as good for another 10. Knights of the Fallen Empire could change that. If the storyline of the Fallen Empire is as good as the devs and game reviewers say it is, this may help fix the lack of story cohesion that we've seen in Return of the Hutt Cartel and Shadow of Revan. But will an hour plus of monthly story keep story players subscribed for months at a time? Guild Wars 2 tried that with their sub-free game, and it had some success. But Swtor's story is of much higher quality and only available with a subscription, unlike Guild Wars 2's Living World. So the real question is whether the endgame is sufficient for Star Wars Knights of the Fallen Empire. After all, the number one mentioned problem in Swtor at launch seems to be that some complained of the Elder game. People are already complaining about the Elder game in Knights of the Fallen Empire, and it hasn't even launched yet. So for perspective, we should try and remember that at launch, Swtor had 2 ops, the Eternity Vault and Karaga's Palace, as well as endgame PvP on Ilum, which was so buggy that it was eventually removed, in addition to the dailies on Ilum and Belsavis, but those weren't exactly fun. Going back to the raids, they were really too shallow and insufficient for progression raiding, and too boring and repetitive for casual play, not to mention difficult to get into without a group finder. Knights of the Fallen Empire aims to address that by adding 1 hour per month of story, and crucially adding 10 ops and 24 heroic mode flashpoints, and something else that they claim will be endgame like nothing seen before. I'm sure there's a TM hidden somewhere. But this will likely keep all the old dailies, PvP, and Galactic Starfighter in place. So this seems like it is finally enough endgame to keep the game relevant for a long period of time. This would have been a great starting point to release the game, and to the new players that Knights of the Fallen Empire is surely going to attract, the game will seem like a phenomenal value, but it's kind of too late for most of the players who've left already, unless they're willing to give the game another try. So for existing players, especially progression raiders and ranked PvP, this system is just a repackaging of old content. As we speak, raiders are quitting the game as they don't feel like waiting for operations that aren't going to appear, well, new operations. The ones that are going to appear are things they've beaten dozens of times over. PvPers have been leaving for a while now, and the game hasn't added PvP content in over a year at this point. Swtor is becoming an ever more casual game, and BioWare seems to like this change. They want the game to be more casual focused than it already is. Since launch, Swtor has added more minigames and appearance options such as on-rail space combat editions, off-rail space PvP, player housing, the appearance designer tab, which came a couple of updates ago, and the never-ending deluge of cartel market crap that the devs throw at us. So now we know that the game is adding soloable flashpoints for story players. For better or for worse, BioWare is taking a guess that their casual players are the core player base in Swtor. Casuals love the game. They also enjoy endless content like strongholds and unranked PvP that BioWare can improve piecemeal and not give big overhauls like progression rating and ranked PvP requires. The overhaul of the old raids and flashpoints is BioWare's newest attempt to get players into existing group content by making it easier than ever to queue into Group Finder rather than spamming looking for group on /general. But this attempt, and the attempt to get the solo content only players to try the old flashpoints, could easily fail. It certainly makes sense that the old flashpoints are being made solo. To the casual player, who very seldom groups, the story is probably more important to them than the flashpoints. However, they are never told that the flashpoints are story. They never do Hammer Station or fight Clan Varad. They never see Revan or capture the Foundry. To the casual player, Ilum is a confusing mess, and when they finally meet Malgus, who they've never seen since the Deceived trailer, and then after 30 minutes, he declares his new empire. Without doing the flashpoints, it is easy to miss that the player and Malgus should have met long ago, and that the player was personally betrayed by Malgus. The Malgus storyline is supposed to be the grand end to the first game, but to many players, it was just the disappointing one. With these soloable flashpoints, the story will be just as subtle and well developed to casual players as it was to the players who did all of the group content at launch. The epithet, Malgus the Betrayer, will finally make as much sense to the tens of thousands of players who first met him at 50 as it did to the players who first met him at 17 in Hammer Station, and unwittingly assembled the weapons, troops, and technology, as well as the foundry that he used to build his war machine. But the fundamental flaw in putting all of this work into redesigning the level content is that the endgame will remain undeveloped. Every encounter that had to be fine-tuned and altered was less time that could have been spent on developing new flashpoints and ops. The game will be in its most playable state for new players and players who left long ago. But, to the faithful few, the ones who remain subbed even now, the game is just $15 in subscription payments, and however much else spent on the game that isn't adding new Elder Game content. BioWare is betting that the hordes of new players will vastly alter the demographics of the game and replace the players that have left. They are guessing that many of the players who have never played an MMO in their lives will become so addicted to the story that they never leave. For the new players, every bit of content will be new. The game will be in the most polished state that it's ever been, just as BioWare wanted. In effect, Star Wars Knights of the Fallen Empire might be the rebirth of Swtor. It might in fact be Swtor 2.0, a new game which BioWare thinks will again have a shot at challenging the top MMORPGs. They are unofficially reintroducing the subscription-only model at $60, and bringing players into the game with story. This may well work with new players to whom the soloable flashpoints and dozens of heroic mode flashpoints seem like a fun way to spend an evening. The Galactic Starfighter content and on-rail space sim will provide the mix of space combat that fans have wanted since the start, and the strongholds will give us a persistent goal for new players to work towards, especially as BioWare reduces the leveling time and the amount of credits that players have decreases, and releases new strongholds. In short, Knights of the Fallen Empire might well be the death of Swtor. In fact, Swtor's death might have started the moment Shadow of Revan hit and PvPers started leaving. The departure of progression rating is just a continuation of that. But this isn't to say that there will be no new rating or no new PvP, but it is being de-emphasized. Swtor might have started dying a few months ago, but that doesn't mean that the game is dead or even dying. I think instead we are seeing the start of an entirely new game, with a new design philosophy, and one day, a new player base. And that will be the topic of our next video.